Welcome to the Explainer. So, the New York Knicks are your 2025-2026 NBA champions. But, as soon as that confetti gets swept away and the parade floats go into storage, the real game actually begins. Today, we're putting on our front office hats to look at the ruthless strategic and financial realities of keeping a championship team together. Winning a title is the ultimate dream, obviously. But managing the cap sheet to sustain that success, that comes with an incredibly complex price tag. Here's the agenda for today's roster puzzle. 1. The cost of winning. 2. The Karl Anthony Towns dilemma. 3. Inside the experts report. 4. Evaluating the on-court value. 5. The new CBA reality. And 6. What happens next. Okay, let's dive into this.
Section 1. The cost of winning. The price of a championship core.
Look, it is literally impossible to overstate the emotional high of the Knicks' incredible championship run. This city, this fan base, they've waited a really long time for this. But, the morning after the championship, the champagne dries up and the spreadsheets open. You've got this championship core: Jalen Brunson, OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, and Karl Anthony Towns. It's a perfect symphony on the court, for sure, but it's also one of the most expensive cores in the entire league on the payroll. You simply can't pay everyone top dollar forever in today's NBA without facing some severe roster-building consequences down the line. And that brings us to the absolute most complicated piece of this whole puzzle. Section 2. The Karl Anthony Towns dilemma. The odd man out? Because when you've got a roster just packed with highly paid stars, someone eventually becomes the odd man out. And for the front office, the guy in the absolute most precarious position right now is Karl Anthony Towns. The crucial sticking point here? $118 million. Yep, that is exactly what's left on his current deal over the next 2 years. It's a massive cap commitment, man, and it basically forces both the player and the franchise into this fascinating game of financial chess when it comes to leverage and long-term flexibility. Now, despite being a cornerstone of a literal championship team, and despite being eligible for a contract extension since last summer, there's been no formal offer from the Knicks. None. Zero. For over a year now, the front office has held off on putting a new deal on the table. And you got to ask yourself, why on earth would a team delay extending one of its most talented players right after winning a ring? Section 3. Inside the experts report with Vince Goodwill. Time to get that true expert perspective. To really grasp the player psychology at play here, we need to shift into insider intel mode and lean on the experts. Senior NBA insider Vince Goodwill recently reported on NBA Today, and I quote, "The Knicks did not offer him one. He was disappointed, but he says he wants to be a Knick for life. The Knicks won the championship. Karl Anthony Towns was a hub. He's expecting some resolution to that soon." End quote. This expert insight perfectly captures the tension between business and ego. On one hand, you have a player who feels a totally natural sense of disappointment at not being extended, but on the other, his dedication to remaining in New York is just unwavering. He views himself as a central hub of this championship. And honestly, he expects the business side to reflect that reality soon. To add a little more context to that intense loyalty, you really have to remember his journey. After 9 up and down years with the Minnesota Timberwolves, KT finally feels like he has found his true NBA home in New York. The expert consensus across the board is crystal clear. He wants to spend the rest of his career exactly where he is right now. He doesn't want to test free agency. He wants to build a lasting legacy right there in Madison Square Garden. Section 4. Evaluating the on-court value. The case for a max contract. So, if we put the emotions and the loyalty aside for just a second, we have to objectively validate his worthiness for a max contract, right? Does his play actually justify the massive financial commitment he's looking for? Well, during this historic season, he averaged 20.1 points and 11 rebounds per game. He chipped in 3 assists, almost a steal, and half a block a game, all while shooting an incredibly efficient 50.1% from the floor. I mean, this data absolutely proves his value as a modern, highly versatile scoring big man. He's not just a traditional center standing in the paint. He can put the ball on the floor, he can shoot from the perimeter, and he applies immense pressure at all 3 levels. Guys, these are textbook max contract numbers. And beyond just the raw stats, his skills aren't easily replaceable. At all. He's been a picture-perfect fit alongside Jalen Brunson. In fact, a lot of analysts argue he's straight up the second-best player on this championship team. He played a crucial, undeniable role in their historic title run. Plus, he's built this deep, organic chemistry, not just with Brunson and the rest of the roster, but with the notoriously demanding New York fans. Section 5. The new CBA reality, the danger of overpaying. So, if he has the stats, the chemistry, and the championship pedigree, what is the holdup? Well, the ultimate antagonist in our story today is the NBA's new collective bargaining agreement. Under this new CBA, teams have to be exceptionally careful with their finances because crossing into those punitive tax aprons, it can literally paralyze your team-building abilities. It freezes your trades, it locks up your draft picks. It's a nightmare. Just look at what the Knicks have already done. They swapped out the expensive Mitchell Robinson for a cheaper veteran option in Andre Drummond just to trim the fat and stay under those aprons. But here's the real danger of over-indexing on cost-cutting. Swapping out role players is one thing, sure, but applying those exact same cap-cutting measures to a six-time All-Star like Towns, that is a completely different game. Depending on what they might get back in a hypothetical trade, trying to save a few bucks by moving on from their versatile hub could permanently slam their championship window shut. You simply do not replace 20 and 11 on 50% shooting with a budget-free agent. You just don't. Section 6. What happens next? Establishing a long-term vision. The Knicks absolutely have to establish a clear, strategic, long-term vision before committing max money to a 30-year-old who's just entering his prime. Fortunately, there's one very positive sign for New York here, and it might just be the key to unlocking this whole dilemma. Towns has actually expressed a willingness to sacrifice some of his own earnings to stay in New York. If he is truly open to taking a pay cut, wow. That would make the front office's job infinitely easier. It would allow them to keep the core together while safely navigating those treacherous waters of the new CBA. However, in the ruthless business of professional basketball, there are absolutely no guarantees. The Knicks front office has proven time and time again they will be ruthless if necessary when it comes to asset management. So if a highly favorable trade offer suddenly emerges, one that brings back younger, cheaper talent with high upside, or if Towns just happens to underperform early next season while playing without that extension, the Knicks might suddenly find the exact leverage and justification they need to part ways with a six-time All-Star. Honestly, the situation is incredibly fluid right now. Which leaves us with this final, high-stakes question to ponder as we wrap up today's explainer. Will loyalty and the desire to pay their champions ultimately cost the Knicks their financial future and their roster flexibility? Or will Karl Anthony Towns actually choose to sacrifice millions of his own dollars to cement a modern NBA dynasty in New York? This collision course between basketball business and player loyalty has literally never been more fascinating to watch. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I highly encourage you to keep a very close eye on how this front office dilemma unfolds.